Here we are, episode 2 of Max and Herc, the podcast. They said we would never get this far.
We did.
We did.
We did. And we cussed and everything in the first one, and they still let us have the second one.
We asked if we could cuss in this one. They said, don't do it ever again. See, every time we do that, they're gonna bleep it out, but it takes 15 minutes, and the manpower here sometimes is a little limited, so Hercules is making a lot of enemies around here. Before we get into, we're going to talk about MLS, a big weekend in Liga MX, we'll talk about that going forward. I want to ask you, what is the love affair of MLS players and the show The Bachelor? Because Twellman's tweeting about it, you're tweeting about it.
For the
it's
record,
out of control.
We're not MLS players anymore, but there is a love affair with The Bachelor. Look, for me, it just makes me feel better about myself. Seeing this train wreck on TV makes me feel better about my life. You know, I don't feel as depressed. So it's now, but in all honesty, it's entertainment.
If you were not off the market, and they came up to you on The Bachelor, would you consider it?
No chance. No chance. You are at the beck and call of those producers. They will paint you the way they want to paint you. And if you like The Bachelor, go see this show called Unreal. It's like a scripted series kind of based on The Bachelor, loosely based, and it's very hilarious.
Okay. See, I like to see what we're watching. I think people, this is the podcast, we're a little relaxed here. We want to talk about what we do on a day-to-day. Hey, if you're interested, I went skiing with my son. He crashed a few times. It wasn't good. He may not go skiing again anytime soon. But, we watch a lot of TV and so forth. And we're obviously immersed into football, soccer. Was that the old... Do you remember that old adage of MLS they pushed out? What did you think about that? Remember they said soccer, football.
Yeah, calcio, football.
It lasted 1 year.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that.
I liked it, but I understand people are scratching their head. Anyway, I'm pretty pumped about the incoming group of players for Major League Soccer. More so than I can remember. I don't want to be too vague, but more so than I can remember in, say, 5-6 years. There was a time where we got excited. We had David Beckham and a couple other guys, and that was the first time we had guys people really recognized. And then through it all, they've now discovered the meat and potato guys that are going to play every game, that you may not know the name, but these are the guys that could probably lead you to a championship. But Diego Valeri comes to mind. But you're getting all these really exciting, in particular, South American playmakers. The latest is a guy that we are very familiar with, Fredy Montero. Before I get your thoughts on him, and there was an interaction between his former team and some of his former teammates, what is your overall thought on some of the new faces league-wide coming in? The big names,
I think a lot of it has to do with el aficionado, the fan. The fan is just so much more sophisticated. They value a good player coming in. They no longer want the player who's older in age, who carried a name in Europe or in South America. They want the player who's going to produce for them on the field today. And I think that plays a huge role. And also, these players are making MLS their league of choice. That's another thing.
That's huge.
Before, these players wouldn't have came. Now they're respecting the league. They're seeing the growth. They're seeing the opportunity at hand. And I think that's important. That's an important thing to recognize. And
we'll talk about where that perception's coming from and who's kind of dictating that as well. But there was a moment, I think, the last couple years when the big names, Lampard, Gerrard, Pirlo, and I said it to a lot of folks, and I got on a little interaction on Twitter. I go, maybe that day is over.
What you say about Pirlo, huh?
What's with, are you one of those Pirlo fanboys?
Vino. He's like Vino.
I can't take it. I cannot take. I watch him play, and I'm like sitting there and go, everyone's having to work a lot harder so that he can be accommodated, and it drives me crazy. That's not the MLS style. Everyone's got to bring their own lunch bucket.
No, you're absolutely right when you say everybody has to bring their own lunch bucket.
And he's like, I'm not going to
work. But
lunch bucket, I don't even know where that came from.
You have to appreciate what the man's done, in the soccer landscape.
Okay.
For just world football in general. I'm a fan of what Pirlo was. At times he still brings it out. He's got those flashes, but you're absolutely right. If you're playing today in today's football, 11v11, you can't afford to have one player take a playoff.
See, Jimmy Conrad didn't talk to me for a while because I said one little thing about Pirlo that he didn't care for. So I don't want to make enemies here. And Pirlo is back, so I applaud him. That's great for him to be back. But there was a moment where is this going to be the case where these guys in their mid-30s coming in, and then lo and behold, guys in their mid-20s, guys that have proven themselves in Mexico and South America, Central America, a little bit in Europe, coming in here. That's a step. We saw Schweinsteiger kind of come to the fire and go, here we go again, and then it was limited. It's okay to have a couple, but I don't think it could be the thing.
It's okay to have a couple to create show, to create the buzz, but like you said, the meat and bones, what you really want is you want that substance. You want those players who are going to produce on the field, regardless. To me, the age doesn't matter, but it helps for perception, league perception, when you have these players making the league their league of choice.
Okay, let's talk about Fredy Montero. I guess this came about from the Vancouver Whitecaps. They were in desperate need of a guy who could score goals.
Yeah.
And some options were running out.
Ever since Camilo Sanveso left, the Whitecaps, they've really struggled to put the ball in the back of the net or find somebody who consistently can put the ball in the back of the net. And I think Fredy Montero fits that bill. You know, he's a very talented player. He's had success everywhere he's gone. He's worth his weight in gold, really. You know, a guy who can score goals, set goals up. He's got a great soccer IQ on him. Makes the players around him better. It just fit.
Yeah, and he was successful here. As you pointed out, that is huge. On loan, it's a one-year loan coming from the Chinese Super League. Vancouver had to move up in the pecking order, the allocation order to get him, moving up into Minnesota. It's an apparatus of the league. We'll talk about that shortly. But that's kind of started this whole discussion where Brad Evans coming out, sending a tweet, and I might use some bad language here if we could show the tweet. He said, despite the MLS player acquisition mechanism, I'd never go to a rival team. Vancouver, the rival of the Seattle Sounders, and now this has opened up. And part of me is happy to hear this because I think power is important for the player. MLS for years, it's play, not be heard, or seen or not heard. And we're getting to the point now where I think players should be emboldened a little bit. This is very new to the league, and I respect Brad Evans a lot as a player, but this does possibly open a can of worms. What do you think the thought process is with some of these players
Let
out
me
there?
start off by saying Brad Evans is a friend, and I love and respect the guy. Few are very open like he is, or as colorful as he is.
Are you going to rip him now?
I'm not going to rip him, but I'm going to be honest. He spoke from a position of privilege, and that is very dangerous.
Yep.
Not too many players around the world have the privilege of being at a great club for over a decade or close to a decade. He's been at 2 clubs his whole career. Players don't have that luxury anymore. You know, Fredy Montero would love to come back to Seattle. His family is in Seattle. His family, his wife's there, his kids go to school there. He didn't uproot them when he went back to Colombia. He didn't uproot them when he went to Portugal. He didn't uproot them when he went to China. He's not going to do the same thing now. He's now closer to home, about 2.5 hours from home.
It's a good situation.
It's a win-win for him. I understand what Brad's saying, but I think it's a little out of depth with the reality in today's soccer world.
I know, Brad. I haven't spoken to him in a while. I get stuck here in Bristol sometimes. Part of the reason I want to do is maybe we can get out and do stuff. I've been incubated here. But I wonder if he would put his money where his mouth is in this case, if in the fact he did get traded. Would he be able to say, I'm not going to trade? Am I going to be empowered to the point where I can't be traded? I would imagine he ends up becoming a Vancouver player if something happened. And I mentioned the trade because Dax McCarty, after Brad Evans' tweet, said, talking about I would never go to a rival team, he said, what if you got traded to one? The players aren't in a position where they control this. If Brad Evans was traded to Vancouver, he's a Vancouver player.
Dax McCarty's been a very good MLS soldier. He's played in 3 Eastern
Both these guys are at the top line of great servants to Major League Soccer.
Absolutely. But Dax is absolutely right. What would you do? Sometimes you don't have a choice. Are you going to stop playing? You know, your livelihood ends. This is what you've done. This is what you've been taught to do. This is how you make your living. You know, are you just going to quit at the prime of your career? No. Nobody's going to quit at the prime of their career. Unfortunately, when you sign a contract with MLS, you sign away your FIFPro rights. That gives them the liberty to trade you at will, like an MLB team, NBA team, to wherever they want. The only way you can put a stop to that is don't play. Don't play. But players aren't going to do that. They don't have that luxury. That's why I say when Brad Evans spoke about this, he spoke from a position of privilege, and that's a very dangerous thing.
Players don't have that power. It was interesting. There was a big trade in the NBA where DeMarcus Cousins completely unexpectedly gets traded from the Sacramento Kings to the New Orleans Pelicans. The NBA players, superstar players in particular, have that power where these trades would never happen because you're guaranteed so much money. And it certainly made you think because after making that trade, Sacramento's been vilified because they didn't get what they wanted because the agent of the player is saying you can't get traded here, he's not going to sign with you, he can't make the money here. And maybe MLS becomes like that at some point, but it's a long way to go. But I see these teams relinquishing power, and I wonder, is it best that the teams remain in that position of power? And MLS, look, it's a long time to go. They've adapted with collective bargaining agreements. That will change. Maybe it changes a little bit here. But those apparatuses to get players to go where they are, that keeps things moving along at some point. But if we get these star players maybe saying something like that, it perhaps could change.
Yeah, there's a difference between the star players in the NBA and the star players in the MLS.
Yeah,
Especially the
there's a
American
big gap.
star players. There's a big gap in wage. There's a big gap in I would say, power, or overall what you can do with your voice. It's unfortunate. It's a league. It's a very good league, very strong league. The players here are stronger than they actually think, and I don't think they're aware of that. They have more say if they speak up. But the harsh reality is a lot just won't, because they fear this the meeting in the careers.
Yeah, I look forward to the. By the way, when we came here, I said this is really important. We make it conversational and unscripted. And then I have like, look at all this. It's absurd. One day we look forward to when the apparatuses come out where we don't have things. It hurts my head sometimes. Targeted allocation money, general allocation money, allocation. All leagues have this, but
all leagues in the United States.
All leagues in the United States.
In this continent have this. It's a very American, Big Four, Big Five sport thing.
Do you think that it puts MLS at a disadvantage?
It puts the MLS league at an advantage. I think it puts the player at a disadvantage.
Okay. Well, this is something I think we'll certainly pick up. In the meantime, Freddie Montero is going to be a Vancouver Whitecap player. Real quickly about how important was it for them to sign him? There's pressure, and I heard you and Sebastian having a discussion about Portland wins a championship, Seattle wins a championship.
They were on the clock.
They were on the clock.
Absolutely.
They need to make a big move. This certainly classifies as something like that. Is this a team that is close?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have, CONCACAF Champions League contention coming up this week. If they can get those players integrated into the system, fit and ready to play, they can really make an impact. They can really surprise the New York Red Bulls and maybe surprise the rest of the teams in that tournament.
Let's see if they can get ahead in Cascadia, because Seattle looks strong with Dempsey coming back, and then Portland made some really nice additions, including Sebastian Blanco, which is the next discussion I wanted to have with you. This is really exciting for Major League Soccer. I look back as a fan when MLS was in diapers, even before MLS was into existence, and Mexican leagues had this great. What built some of their players is they would go to South America and get these playmakers and spend. They'd come over and they would be super successful. Alex Aguinaga certainly comes to mind, and this is a guy who became a hero. Saturnino Cardoso, a guy who could score a ton of goals. They come over from South America. Mexico pays them where they're not getting money there.
Yeah.
And that built that league to where it's at. I think it's the best league in the Americas. All due respect to Argentina and Brazil, but they get rated so much by players. A lot of their best players play elsewhere. And now Major League Soccer is making some inroads. And you were telling me about Sebastian Blanco is a great example, because this was a guy that was in the crosshairs for Mexican clubs, and he comes instead to the Portland Timbers.
Well, I'll give you a few examples. I love, Blanco going to Portland. I love Almiron to Atlanta. All the Atlanta signings, for me, unbelievable signings. Great coups. You're getting these players
that they're competing with not only Mexico, but the rest of the world.
The rest of the world, and they're coming here. That's great. These are players you want to have in your league. But then I see players like, and it's not a dig, but Maxi Morales and Victor Vasquez, who combined in León and Cruz Azul had about 36 appearances and 3 goals between the two, and now are handed TAM money and DP contracts here in the MLS. And you have players like Dax McCarty, Sasha Kleshton, Benny Fallhaber, Lee Wynn, who are American players who have been very good players in this league and who haven't gotten their due. And they're having these players, because they come from the outside, get the benefit of the doubt. So it's a very big contrast where you're seeing the league step up in this motion with these players like Almiron and Blanco, and it's very eye-opening and it's very refreshing. But then we're still doing some of the same things. Yeah, that we need to probably stop. We need to start rewarding some of these players who are successful in this league, because it's a very difficult league to play, and it's a very difficult league to succeed in.
Is it a desperation move? I mean, obviously, Atlanta, they're starting with a clean slate. They circled Almiron and go, this is the guy we want, and they made sure they got it. I think Sebastian Blanco, Portland, in somewhat of a similar position, because that was the one position they really needed to get their attack all in the line. The other names you mentioned, certainly Morales and
Vasquez,
that Z throws me off. And Vasquez, these are guys that came in a little bit later, and teams probably scrambling to make sure that they have what they need.
And it's not their fault. No. Look, your market value is what a team is willing to pay for you. So that's their market value. If they can get that, more power to them. We should all be happy for them. My gripe is more, what if these players merited to say, bring those in? If you look at their trajectory, they're in some ways journeymen from other countries. They played. Maxi Morales played in Argentina, played in Russia, played in Italy, played in Mexico. around the world, that would be considered a journeyman.
Yep.
We have journeymen that we consider journeymen here in the MLS, and we, the pundits and fans sometimes make less of those players. Why aren't we making less of these players? I think that you have to analyze each situation for what it is. And if a player's successful within this league, reward him for being successful within this league.
Right. It's very frustrating. As I think we try to win new fans here, and they don't know the inner workings of the league. And they say, wow, this is a guy, Morales is a guy I saw. I mean, when I was working at Fox, I'd call his Argentinian games. I go, this guy's got it. I saw him in Italy, he's got it. And obviously, didn't go well in Mexico. My initial reaction is, great, this is a guy we're going to bring in. But you look closer at the way he's played recently, and certainly the money's coming in, it's tricky. It's just that weird emotion of getting excited, say, hey, bring all these guys in. Let's make this league stronger. We're expanding. But you forget about the guys that you mentioned, and it's really important to not only build outside, but within as well.
Absolutely. I think the core is the most important thing for each team. And if you have players who understand the league, understand the travel, the systems, everything that's included, all these mechanisms that we always talk about, players that have been there, done that here, that's something to speak for.
I hope all those guys do well, but it's going to be a toll, especially for Morales, who's going to play it.
Listen, it's always a gamble when you bring
yes,
it's always a gamble when you bring talent from outside of the MLS in who've never played here. It's always a gamble. I hope these players do well, because if they do well, it speaks well for New York, speaks well for the league, speaks well for us.
Right, the Argentinos, though, have done pretty well. I'd say 70%, 60%.
Are you Argentino?
No, but that's the first league I call, and I see these guys I want to do well. And you were talking about Guillermo Barros Esqueloto, who's the great success story, and here he's like telling these guys,
I
MLS.
honestly think anytime any Argentino asks him about MLS, he's a pro MLS advocate, and I love that.
That is great.
I love that.
Because a lot of people in Europe might say, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Not anymore. That was made from 5 years, but now they know a lot better. All right, we'll continue that. Okay, we're getting really close to kicking off Major League Soccer, so we'll get closer to previewing these teams. But we're going to continue here on Max and Herc. We'll talk about Liga MX ahead. We also have Jonathan Spector, who is one of those American internationals, spent a long time overseas, coming back to the league, to Orlando City. Max and Herc, Episode 2. Welcome back to Max and Herc. Special guest, as we're always going to have here. We're going to bring it strong every week. We have Jonathan Spector, who U.S. international and an icon at Birmingham City, certainly for his days playing in England, also played at West Ham. He joins us now. And what we do here, we like to ask the really important questions, Jonathan, and then we'll go down. So my first question, you were teammates with Herc in the 2010 World Cup. Could you give us some interesting stories about what he did? Did he have his nail clippings floating around? What kind of pajamas he wore?
Low-key.
You know what? I can't remember if he wore pajamas to bed or not. Actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
He was dialed in. He was dialed into the games.
Yeah. That's a good question. And I don't remember the snoring being too bad either, which is always a concern when you have a roommate.
Yeah,
that's at top of the list. You want to make sure you don't have a snorer.
No snore. I think we were pretty easy to get along with. He's an easy guy to get along with. Very good guy.
See, my issue would be to make sure he doesn't. For me, if I was a player, and this is why I'm not an international player by any means, if I come in at 4 a.m., and that would probably rule me out very quickly. Jonathan, why come back to Major League? Why come back to the States and come here to Major League Soccer?
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always been a ambition and desire of mine to play in the MLS. I've said it in previous interviews throughout my career, and this opportunity arose, and it just seemed like the right fit at the right time for me.
Jonathan, was Chicago in the mix at all? Because I know you're from Chicago. Did you play at all with the Fire at the Academy or Reserves or any of that? Were they in the mix?
I didn't play with the Chicago Fire Academy. That was set up after I had already moved to England. I did play on the PDL team, which I don't think exists anymore. There's been a lot of changes in how the whole setup is. But when I was younger, when I was about 14, 15, I did have the opportunity to train with the Chicago Fire when Bob Bradley was in charge. I think they were training out in Lake Forest at the time. And as a matter of fact, C.J. Brown was on the team, who now is one of the coaches here in Orlando. So kind of come full circle for me there. But once Orlando was interested, and I had the opportunity to speak to Jason Kreis about coming here, it just seemed like a really good fit. Everything he had to say about the team, my role in the team, and also just the excitement in the city surrounding the club was pretty impressive. Selling 18,000 season tickets, before the season for the opening game is pretty incredible. So I'm excited to be part of it, and looking forward to playing here in Orlando.
Absolutely. Just overall thoughts really quick on the MLS mechanisms that got you to Orlando. Do you find it a bit silly that having no prior ties really to Major League Soccer, you would have to go through a mechanism and not really have the ultimate choice of where you end up?
Yeah, it's a different system from what I was used to and accustomed to. I was kind of learning it as I went along, but I have to say, working with both Orlando and my former club, Birmingham City, they were great about it. I wasn't sure how it was all going to play out, but everyone at the club at Birmingham City was great, in terms of understanding where I was coming from and why I wanted to leave. It was an ambition of mine ever since I was relegated with West Ham about 6 seasons ago to get back to the Premier League. So for me, it was difficult to walk away from that. But at the same time, the opportunity to come to Orlando was too great to pass up.
Let me ask you about that, because I think people have to be reminded about what you've accomplished overseas. You played in the Premier League, and Birmingham City was a Premier League side, not there now, but very close to perhaps being there once again at some point. But the time you left there, you had more appearances for that club than anyone else. So you have been immersed into English life and culture. How is that going to change now? What are the challenges to being American but having to readapt here after such a long spell overseas?
Yeah, there's absolutely an adjustment. I'd come back every offseason. Both my wife and I are from Chicago, so we always came back to the States and spent pretty much our entire offseason here, especially once we had our little boy was born. We wanted him to be around his family members. So I've always stayed connected with the MLS because I'd go to games. I've got friends playing and former teammates that are playing in the league. And in fact, Sky Sports in England asked me to do some commentary on the games the last couple of seasons. So it was my kind of way of staying connected with the league, even though I was playing abroad. And as I said, it was always a desire of mine to play in the MLS, and now it's kind of come to fruition.
You mentioned Sky Sports. How is Major League Soccer received in England from your perspective?
It's growing in popularity, and it's amazing the number of guys that I, have played with previously asking about what it's like in the MLS and if they'd have any opportunity, if I knew anyone who could help them get to the league. So there's a huge amount of popularity, and there's a lot of guys who see, the success of, let's say, Bradley Wright Phillips, for example, who played in England in the Championship and at a number of clubs there. He's come to the MLS and he's done exceptionally well. So I think guys in England see that and think, hey, this could be a great opportunity for me as well.
It's amazing the type of career you've had, at such a young age, going to Manchester United and playing for such a long time in England. And people forget you've been with 3 different national team coaches. You were with Bruce, Bob, and Jurgen. Not a lot of players can really stake that claim. What was it like seeing the differences in all those coaches? Did you see a tactical shift from coach to coach? Was there any differences in between 3 that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, every coach is going to have their differences in the way they want to approach games and the way they think the game should be played. So it's interesting now that obviously Bruce is back in charge. Each one, you have to say they were all successful in their own right. Both Bruce and Bob Bradley and Jurgen as well. They all had their successes. So I think it's important, that the U.S. continues to develop and grow. And I think, to be honest, I think the MLS, the league in general, has had a huge impact on the growth of the sport and the success of the national team. I think there's definitely a correlation between the two there. But in terms of, the differences with the coaches, it's hard to say exactly, the exact kind of differences each one brought to the table. But they all had their own different ideas, but each one was very successful.
Jonathan, where do your national team aspirations stand now, and how does this move to Major League Soccer help or hinder, facilitate that?
This move wasn't about, getting back to being with the national team more regularly. Obviously, if that, is a result of it, that'd be great. It's always an honor, as Herc knows, to put on that jersey and represent your country. But all I can concentrate right now on is playing for my club team, doing well, and helping that team be successful, and then the rest kind of comes along after the fact, hopefully with the national team.
It's always interesting to get a perspective of somebody who's been on the other side. Here we have our own thoughts about the national team, but what do you think the perception is of the national team in England?
Of the English national team?
No, of our national, the U.S. men's national team here, but in England.
Right. It's interesting. When I first went over there 14 years ago, there was very little, if any, respect given to American soccer players and our national team, and that's changed a huge amount. And I think having American players that have gone over there and be successful has really changed that. I mean, you look at the likes of Brian McBride, for example, had a great career at Fulham, and he wasn't there all that long, but he had a huge impact as the captain, and they even decided to name a pub after him right outside the stadium. So
we got to stop by there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think having players like that who have gone out there, been successful, and then done well with the national team, I think the perception of American soccer has changed massively, not just in England, but throughout Europe. And for the better.
Brian works with us here, Jonathan, and the fact that he's never mentioned this pub story is very disappointing. I'm going to have to give him some grief about that. And he will. Hey, playing in Orlando, what are you looking forward to? I mean, you're gonna have a summertime in Orlando, which should be interesting, but how are you preparing not only for life in Major League Soccer, but playing in this specific market?
Well, as I said, when Jason and I met, had the chance to speak, he told me not just about, the team and my role in the team, but just really about the excitement in this city surrounding the team. And to me, that's pretty special. That's important. I'm used to playing in front of relatively big crowds in England and very passionate supporters. And it seems like they really have that here. They've grown that. For a team that's only been around for a few years, that's pretty incredible, I think. So that was kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to sign with Orlando.
What about the opportunity to play with the Kaká? Because you see him, from the outside. When you see him on TV, he was a World Player of the Year, and you have this thing built up of he's such a great player. And now you get to see him day in, day out, and just training and being with him the way he is on the field and off the field. What are your thoughts about Kaká?
Yeah, he's a fantastic player. I mean, what can you say about him? You certainly can't criticize him in anything that he's achieved. He's got a great work ethic, and it shows. With all the success he's had, both for his club and his country. I've had opportunity, maybe misfortune of playing against him with the national team in the Confederations Cup, and we ended up losing 3-2 in that final, which was massively disappointing. So. But now, I get to play with him as a teammate, and, I think everyone knows what he's about. He's a fantastic player. He can change a game, in a heartbeat, and he's someone that we'll be looking to have a big impact in this team.
We'll be in Orlando to see your opener against NYCFC. That's Sunday, March the 5th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Big game between the two teams that came together in that expansion class. How is the team preparing for that opener, which is always one of the big dates on the MLS calendar?
Yeah, we haven't discussed too much that game as of yet. We're all looking forward to that opening game at the stadium against a really good side, and it'll be a good test for us. At the moment, we're still in preseason mode. We know we have a couple of weeks before the season starts. And we're still, we're getting our fitness and getting used to the way Jason, the coach, wants us to play. So, we haven't quite focused on New York City FC as of yet, but I'm sure we will just around the corner here. We've got one more preseason friendly coming up, and, it's still about getting to know one another and learning each other's attributes. And I think we're starting to gel as a team, and it's important going into the opening game that we have that solid foundation as certainly a defensive unit and as a team in general.
We have a question here from our producer he wanted to ask. As we pointed out, you started at Manchester United. What were some interactions like with Sir Alex Ferguson? Did he ever yell at you? Did he ever make you uncomfortable?
You know what? He gets a bad rap in the media, I have to say, but he was fantastic to me. I remember when I went out there on trial, and I was there for about a week and a half. So last day I was there, he personally offered a contract. And what he said to me was, look, I don't want you to sign anything now. I don't want you to agree to anything now. I want you to go home, talk to your family, make sure they're comfortable with it. If they are, we'll fly everyone out. They'll get to see where you're living, what your day-to-day will be like, and we'll take them to a game. So he was great to me, and he really understood the importance of family and that they would be comfortable with my situation. I was only 17 at the time, so it meant a lot to me that he went through all that trouble to ensure that I was comfortable and my family was comfortable with the decision I wanted to ultimately make. I remember going on that flight and thinking, shoot, how am I going to convince my parents that this is what I want to do and not go to college? But fortunately, they were very supportive of it, and everything worked out for the best, I think.
Mom, Dad, not going to college, but I'm signing with Manchester United. I think they'll be okay. I think thanks for sharing that with us, Jonathan. Real quick, as you mentioned, being 17, going to Europe, what advice would you give to young kids coming from the United States to pursue a similar endeavor?
Look, I've played with guys who made the jump early, made the jump late. Some it was successful for, others not. I think every situation is different and unique. And I think it's important to take advice from other people, but ultimately, it's the individual's decision, and they have to be comfortable and happy with it. I think it's important to take accountability of the decisions you make, and once you do, you have to work exceptionally hard and make the most of the opportunities that you're given.
All right. Beautifully put, Jonathan. Hey, best of luck. We're really thrilled that you're back here in the States playing for Major League Soccer. We'll see you March the 5th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. What a luxury for Orlando, really. Just a great player and
what a great
even better person.
John, we'll have you back here soon. All the best.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Look, I'm a West Ham. That's my team. So, to see him play, and that was pretty. To have an American play on that team meant a lot for me. So I'm really, really thrilled to see him come back
here. What an exceptional career! You take a look at all he's done. I mean, Man United. He's played with the national team, Gold Cups, Confederation Cups, World Cups. Exceptional career in the Premiership in England and Championship. Longevity that he's had. He's played for 3 different national team coaches. That's a lot to be said for a player like that.
All right, we'll get to see him very soon in action in purple for Orlando. We are going to change the subject here a little bit. Something very close to you because you used to play at Liga MX. We're going to get it going. Big weekend down there in Mexico. We'll let you know what happened. Better and worse. One of the reasons I really was excited about taking this podcast on is that we were going to include Liga MX, Liga MX, which you have played many years in for a couple teams, and you have an interesting perspective of that. I have to watch a little bit more. There's so many hours in the day, but I watched the Clásico Nacional. I watched the highlights of some other games. I watched a little bit of Tijuana Pumas.
Oh, a crazy game. Good. Yeah, crazy game.
Great. It was what, 3-3? They tied it
3-0, 2 U.S. men's national team members playing in that game.
Tijuana's my club because
really?
Because I went to 2 games. Because when I was in L.A., I'd drive down there, and there was one time we did something for ESPN where we featured them. So just out of that, I mean, for the time being, unless another team, if you're watching this in Mexico and you want to send me a jersey or something, I can be swayed very easily.
Bye, Max.
But I saw Tijuana, had a good time. I had some great dinners there. If you're ever in Southern California, you get a chance, I highly recommend it. Spend a couple of days.
The food is amazing in Tijuana.
It's got a bad rap. I mean, people go, Tijuana, no, but there's a
the
part of the town that...
Even the people in Tijuana will tell you the beautiful thing about Tijuana is San Diego. But it's amazing when it comes to food. There are so many people from around the Mexican Republic that live there, so the food choices are unreal.
I had a meal, not to get off topic here, but actually I shouldn't even say that because I get off topic a lot. But it was a huachinango, like a big snapper, and it was completely encased in the fish bones and everything.
Yeah, fried. Can you see?
And then it had scallops around it. I mean, it was this thing. And then I had a chelada here. Cloud 9. Then I went to see the football match.
There you go.
So it was good living. But to me, it wasn't a really good weekend for Mexico. It was good to watch. I think
a lot of drama,
a lot to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of drama, but not a great weekend in general to showcase Mexican League soccer.
Right, in particular what happened at Veracruz where it got really hairy. I mean, this is one of those things where you're just hoping no one gets hurt really badly because you look at it and it certainly looks like it's heading there. It was out of control. I know you played at that stadium, but let's talk with the big game of the year, the big sporting event in Mexico on an annual basis, and that was Chivas America. And it wasn't nice on the eyes. 1-0. Chivas wins with a penalty. But there was a couple incidences. There was a stomping incident where very close to the man's groin area where...
Did you think that was a red card?
Yes.
See, I didn't.
Eric, come on, that was terrible.
Max,
I don't care if it's an accident. You get anywhere close to that area.
When you see a loose ball, your reaction is to turn and pivot to go for it. And that's literally what he did. At no time did he look down and see the player's groin area and decide to stomp it, especially being a man down and still in the game. Because America, for as poorly as they played, they were still in that game. Chivas had the majority of the control with possession, but in the first 15, 20 minutes, America really showed how lethal they could be on the counter. Mickey Arroyo, Oribe Peralta almost getting on the end of things. They really showed their worth on that counter. But this isn't the America of old. La Volpe's sold a bill of false goods. It's not the attractive possession style soccer that La Volpe was known for. He hasn't shown it for many years. This team is on a downward spiral. La Volpe is on a downward spiral. He's got the Clásico against Cruz Azul coming up, the Clásico Joven coming up next week. Him and Paco Gemes, they both need to win badly. So, Chivas took advantage of that.
If Ricardo La Volpe and you're in this game, and the water's rising already, and then in the flow of the play, whether he thought the ball was in or out, to dispossess a Chivas player the way he did, and he gets sent off, that is almost grounds to be fired right there, because it's just unacceptable. And the history of that game, if you go look online, and you type in Chivas America, the first three things are huge brawls.
Yeah.
And then to do anything to put it at risk where the emotions are riding so high is unacceptable, and I thought that was just
but if
awful
I'm being honest,
from La
this
Volpe.
is par for the course for La Volpe.
It's not good enough.
But this is par for the course, both performance lately with the team and both his off-field and on-field behavior. I don't think he's the right or adequate man for that job. I think it's above him now.
It's a tough job, we should say.
It's a very tough job, a lot of attention, but there's a reason why they've been so successful. Ricardo Peláez has built something with that club, and in the last 5 years, they've arguably been one of the most consistent, if not the best teams in Mexico. And to see it all go down like that, and Ricardo Peláez, the sporting director down there, is just as much to blame as La Volpe. He's got a hand in this as well.
You tweeted after I said that was an embarrassment what La Volpe did. You go, he got all ball.
He got all ball. He got all ball.
That's true. He was a goalkeeper back then, La Volpe. He was like the third
was.
stringer for Argentina. So anyway, he's better with his hands maybe, but he proved to be pretty good with his feet. Now with that defeat, America, the team that was really under pressure was Tigres. They were the champs, and now America's below them in the standings because Tigres were able to beat Veracruz, but that's not what they're talking about. And
No.
There are stadiums that are much more secure in the in Liga MX. This one, not one of them.
Listen, it's such a great country, such a great league, lots of money in that league, and for all the money and attention that they have in that league, I can't believe how, more often than not, things like this happen. The stadium security is inadequate. The ownership groups are subpar, and I'm talking about Fidel Curi in Veracruz. Fidel Curi, the owner of Veracruz, had an incident over a year ago where he assaulted the head of the Referees Association. So he was banned from any team participation. He can go to his own stadium as a fan and watch the game. So he's sitting in his suite and he's saying, well, Gignac started it because he went and celebrated in front of our fans and they got him all riled up. He's also saying, it's not my fault that...
Very juvenile.
It's not my fault that the city officials don't give me enough security for the stadium. And why? He's implying because his political party, because he's part of a political party called El PRI, doesn't align with their political party, El PAN. So he's implying that they didn't give him the proper security for this. Gignac's comments after the game where they record him saying, I hope they go back to second division. And then, like you said, very juvenile, Fidel Curi comes back with, well, I hope you go back to France.
Yeah.
You know, so it's these things that don't make sense to me with such a great things you can showcase about this league. You know, Gignac himself being such a great player.
A guy in his prime, the top European leagues to come play in Mexico.
You beat out West Ham. He's got a record $4.7 million net contract.
And a guy who's immersed himself in the Mexican culture,
loves the Mexican
language.
One of his sons is Mexican. You know, he's born in Monterrey. He, like you said, immersed himself in that culture, really made himself an ambassador for not only the league but the country. Everybody down there loves him. You've got a team like Tigres, who's one of the most talented teams in this continent, can rival any other team out there. I mean, really,
no argument here.
Really, just a great team, great league, and to have your showcase on a week where it's the Clásico Nacional, the big news is this brawl, and you see the images circulating where there's a guy with an ice pick attacking a fan, where there's
someone could have died.
Someone
could have died.
Somebody could have easily died, and for the president of this team to point fingers and say, you started it, he started it, this and that, instead of saying, I need to be in charge of my stadium security, and it wasn't good enough, and going from there is despicable. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah. I'll always side with Gignac for those reasons you said. And Tigres is a huge success story that is resonating outside of Mexico, not only in the Americas, but also in Europe because of what they were able to do. They're just a super club. So this is a real serious issue. On a weekend where I thought, I said it wasn't great with the Clásico Nacional, but you have so much talent, so many teams emerging.
The Tijuana Pumas game was an awesome game.
The Tijuana, I wanted to talk about Miguel Herrera because maybe it's better for another time, so I'll leave it real brief here. But the Tijuana team, they were really struggling. He's arrived, and they finished first in the standings in the last tournament, and they're right there with Toluca this time around. That's a guy who can coach. That's a guy I think MLS.
He's a great coach.
MLS should be like, because he wants to maybe come over here.
He's proven his worth everywhere he's gone. He's been successful.
Continues.
Tijuana was struggling ever since Antonio Mohamed left the team.
Yeah.
And they finally found their man. He's brought identity to that team. It's a fun team to watch.
It is.
It's a very fun attacking team to watch. Young players, American players as well. Paul Arriola is playing as a wingback, and he's got him playing, as a very good player in a position that he's not familiar with. Joe Benny Corona's made a resurgence with Tijuana, and that's all Miguel Herrera.
Yeah, Greg Garza was there, and now at Atlanta United. So it's a great story, and that's what makes it fun. There's so many good stories in Liga MX. Well, if you have enough on your plate, American soccer fan, you have your
check it out
MLS.
No thy enemy. Know thy enemy.
And then you can have some Champions League here, some Premier League with your fava beans, and it's a tasty, tasty plate. But make sure the meat, big steak, Major League Soccer. All right, we're going to talk. We have some time for CONCACAF Champions League.
The what?
CONCACAF Champions League, is that right?
Oh, yeah. I remember that
It's
league.
just always such a...
I remember that league.
It
was a fun league.
I'm just hoping this is the year. This is the year an MLS team's able to get through. So we'll talk about it. They're down to the quarterfinals, and there might be an opening this time when Max and Herc comes back after this. Here in our studio, we actually have an audience that can join us here. If you're at home and want to sit in the audience, tweet us or hit us on Instagram. Maybe we can make a little room for you.
I'm sure.
We had a producer, researcher extraordinaire Paul Carr was here, who does all our notes. He said he was really interested in our previous discussion about Andrea Pirlo. So I've been thinking maybe our producer Steve Polisi here gave me a death look because he loves Pirlo. Maybe we should have a whole discussion on Andrea Pirlo.
I felt the glare. I didn't know.
Because I said this, and people were up in arms. I said they would have beaten Barcelona in that Champions League final. If he didn't play.
Oh.
How's that for a bombshell?
Well,
because Vidal was chasing and cleaning up and doing this, and I stopped looking at me
I'm
like
not allowed to cuss anymore, and you're talking about Pirlo. You're really
freaking
me
out. We won't. Let's try and pick things up. Well, let's try. CONCACAF Champions League has been like a thorn in the side. Look, I broadcasted a lot, and we wear our MLS hats. We want to see it because the payoff is you get to pay at a FIFA Club World Cup. Should be said, the FIFA Club World Cup hasn't had the effect I think FIFA wanted, where it's going to be this big event. Clearly, because the European South American teams win, they'll always make the final. There's been a couple exceptions, which have been nice. But a lot of people don't even know it's on. But we'd like to see an MLS team make it. So they're down to the quarterfinals. And in its current format, the Champions League, the CONCACAF an MLS team has never won. I think back in 2000, the Galaxy won was a little different. And it's getting beyond frustrating.
In the modern era, the MLS team has made the final twice. That RSL run.
They were
against Monterrey. They were very close. I thought that was the year. And then Montreal Impact, yes, who actually played a very good away game at Estadio Azteca, which is no easy feat and it all unraveled.
Ran out of
home.
steam at the end.
Yeah.
So there's the good news. No one has more teams in the quarterfinals than Major League Soccer. They have three. Oh, I'm sorry, three Mexican teams as well.
Yeah.
But usually the fact that there's not 4 Mexican teams is reason to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Because they could run through and then all of a sudden you have 4 Mexican teams in the semifinals, which has happened.
Yeah, it has happened. They're very good squads on the other side. They take it very seriously. They invest a lot of money in their players to create that depth. So they're very hard teams to compete against. Look, there are a lot of things going against the MLS when it comes to...
What are those things? What are the things that...
You know, I think the most obvious thing that people will say is scheduling. Is these teams are... Liga MX is now going on week 8, and the MLS season hasn't even begun.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. And people say, well, why can't these MLS teams start a lot earlier? Do, a month and a half before preseason's supposed to start it then to be ready for this game, to be informed.
Why not?
CBA rules don't permit it,
You always have an answer. Herc, you always have an answer.
They don't permit it, so...
That's gonna prevent an MLS team possibly from ever winning it.
I don't think the scheduling will be...
The scheduling cannot help.
It doesn't help, but it's much bigger than that.
Max,
it's much bigger than that. It's the money. It's the money. I've always said player 1 through 9 in this MLS can compete with any other team, any other players in this region. But it's 11v11. In today's modern game, if one player takes the night off, you're done. So when you're talking about you have 1 through 9, now theoretically you have 2 guys who aren't up to par, and then you have run of form, you have suspension, you have injury, or just a bad night, whatever it may be. It really puts the odds against you. You have to increase the wage to increase the depth. You have to get better players. You have to get better players in positions of depth to compete with these teams because it's home and away. It's not a one-off.
Yeah, and the build-up towards here is just excruciating. You take your hat off to all the MLS teams and all the teams on the other side of this equation that have to travel so much to Panama, to Guatemala, wherever it is, several times to Mexico.
Listen, when I was at Santos, I played in this tournament.
What was it? What was that? What those logistics like for you? I mean, that had to wear you out.
It does wear you, but we had the luxury because we were so deep that if we were going to go play in El Salvador against FAS or whomever it may be that we were going to play, it was group stage. We didn't have to take it as seriously. We would send the U20 squad. Our U20 squad would go down there and win 4-0. We had that luxury. So when we had to travel from Torreon, which is Santos is located in northern Mexico, to Toronto and play, it wasn't so much, we haven't accumulated all those miles and it wasn't such wear and tear. And when we'd go play down in Toronto, we would handle business, bring it back. And here's another thing. Oftentimes, I remember playing this tournament, we'd come back to Mexico and we'd have a packed crowd, a very aggressive crowd, and we'd score 1 goal. And Mexican teams, when they score a goal, it's very difficult when you're chasing the game against them. They make it very difficult with their possession. They tire you out. They wear you out. And then the second one comes. Then the third one comes. On 2 occasions against 2 MLS teams, we put 6 in the back of the net at home. And you can see this.
And you started feeling bad.
I started feeling bad after my 3rd goal.
Culpa. I'm sorry.
But you see this look in the eyes of like this deer caught in the headlights look from these players.
Wow, that's really interesting.
And you start thinking to yourself, I have on my squad more players who have been there and done that. And this is in years past when I played. Obviously, the league has gotten so much better now, and I believe we are in contention to compete for those spots now. They've increased the TAM money that these teams can spend to compete against other teams in this region for this tournament. MLS wants to win this tournament, but it has to be better. It has to be more money. There has to be more depth created, and you have to have players of importance playing in those games.
Look, I think if you look at it just simply, Tigres was the best team in Mexico. They're still in the tournament. They're probably the favorite to do it. We had the Portland Timbers, our champion, nowhere to be found. Even who is the best MLS? We don't know who is that bell cow MLS team from the season before because things change so much too.
If you're asking me who has the best chance in MLS at this tournament right now,
they're not.
It's FC Dallas.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to play. The winner of Vancouver, Vancouver,
Red
New
Bulls.
York, Red Bull, yes, will play Pumas or Tigres, and that's not a good thing. Tigres is a very dangerous club. Pumas is playing very well at this moment. It's a very hard bracket side to get through. So if you're asking me, FC Dallas has the best shot. Here's the thing with FC Dallas, though. They win the Open Cup. They win the Supporter Shield, which is all great and dandy, but every time they need to do something and do it well in the playoffs, they fall short. So when it matters most, can they put it together? Because they have the talented players to do it.
They face Árabe Unido of Panama.
Which is
a nice story for them to make it this far.
I mean,
They're here for a reason.
They were in Monterrey's group, Rayado's group, and they beat them. You know, it's not an easy team. This team won't go down without a fight.
By the way, to our Salvadorian fans, nice fast drop.
There you go.
Until you said the under-20s beat them 4-0. Then they may have turned us off. But in Mexico, as playing for a Mexican team, how big of a deal is it on that? Is this tournament there? I mean, when you say, hey, CONCACAF Champions, people are like, hey. I mean, obviously they know well enough because they're being successful in it. But is this something that
two trains of
hastens the blood?
Playing in the Club World Cup is very important for a lot of them because you're still going on when the rest are on vacation. It's a big deal. It matters to these clubs. They invest in it. It matters to you as a player. Economically, you get more of an economic incentive to go play in these things, bonuses and whatnot. And two, when you play these MLS teams, it becomes Mexico versus USA.
A lot of people say that's the way this tournament should be. And in all due respect to the Central American teams, they should make it Mexico.
I love
USA
the Central
teams.
American teams being in this, and I don't.
They
think
have two, Saprissa and
I don't think we should discount these teams. They're very good teams. But the big draw in this region, the big draw in CONCACAF, is the USA versus Mexico. It's plain and simple.
Without a doubt.
And I recall playing in these games, and I'm with the Mexican club playing against an American club, an MLS club, and the things are being said in this locker room, and I started thinking in my head pregame, wow, is this what it's like when we're going to play Mexico with the national team when I'm with the U.S.? Are these saying the same things? And it's almost like an out-of-body experience, and it puts me like in a different perspective, but you really get a sense for, I don't want to say the hatred, but the willingness to want to win this game, like you can't lose this game mentality that they have.
Yeah. I like it. The emotions, it's tangible. Look, I've been disappointed so many times with the Champions League. I get excited and then I leave again. And I think the perception of the league is hurt when you say, how you do internationally? You go, wow, we haven't done that. That is a real problem for MLS. And I think getting a team to win it is a good step. Does it solve it all? No, but continuing to fall short. And I know the limitations. It's not a good look for the league.
Max, here's the thing.
This is their chance to make a breakthrough.
Here's the thing. MLS wants to be one of the best leagues in the world. Well, you can't be one of the best leagues in the world if you can't control your region. If you're not the best team in your region.
It's sometimes getting pushed around a lot.
It starts here in the region. You have to start with the region,
close.
then concentrate on the rest of the world because we have things that other leagues can't offer. We really do. It's a great league. It's an exciting league. Honestly, it's getting better and better, but you have to start with your region.
All right. Who do you think is going to win?
Who do I think is going to win?
Yeah.
I'm not a betting man, but if I was, my money would be on Tigres.
I've been known to bet from time to time. Very little.
Who do you think is going to win?
It's going to be Tigres. I mean, why would you say anything else? Maybe Pumas. I mean, I just don't see anyone else coming. Tigres, to me, is a super team. Tigres is a team that stands above. None of these MLS teams that are in this final eight rise above that thing. Yeah. So as much as my heart would say maybe FC Dallas can navigate their way through and make a final, they're not going to win it.
I thought it would be New York. I thought it would be the Red Bull. But all this drama, it's really, I think, unsettled them. And I don't know if they have what it takes to really make a run at this tournament.
All right. Well, we'll see. Hopefully we have some good news out of that competition ahead. Nice job, as always. I mean, it's been a hostile takeover for Herculez Gomez. He's come here to ESPN. He's running the place here in a little bit.
No chance.
Him and Twellman, they're calling all the shots. But we will be back on Monday next week with the podcast. We're getting close. We're going to roll up our sleeves.
Yes.
And maybe I'll wear a jacket next week. Maybe Herc will not wear a jacket. Something to look forward to for those who are watching us, and for those who are just hearing us, we'll fill in the gaps. But again, Monday, Max and Herc podcast, ESPN FC. You can check it on the ESPN FC Pod Center. It's under ESPN FC on iTunes, and that's where you'll find it.
Absolutely.
And we'll see if we can put it other places. But thanks for the support. Keep tweeting us, Instagram, social media. We're all here. Tell us what you want to talk about as well.
Let us know what you want to hear about.
Yeah. All those we'll just talk endlessly. All right. We'll see you next week.